Will AI make us smarter? Will AI help humans become more capable and more functional in society? Hey, this is Justin Hitt from Inside Strategic Relations, where we teach critical thinking skills to help you better navigate the world, gain better influence, and grow your capacity. First thing to understand, that the AI large language models are trained on information available on the internet. The information available on the internet was created by a wide spectrum of individuals, everywhere from scientists to doctors to professionals to people that just spin out articles and produce content. So, for example, Wikipedia, of the contributors of Wikipedia, there's a small number of contributors that produce the majority of articles, and those individuals are not subject matter experts in each of the areas in which they produce articles. They're not really even like professional researchers. They're volunteers who are creating content. So ChatGPT, built on Wikipedia content, is only as good as the overall set of content. Listen carefully. This is very important to understand. The thinking process we're looking here is inputs and outputs, and the inputs to the large language models is general intelligence. Now, you've been on the internet. You know that the internet isn't necessarily intelligent, because ChatGPT is also trained on different message boards, content that has been on different platforms. In fact, the content inputs are impacted by what's considered appropriate public content, what is content that's been approved by big tech or whatever company or corporation that put it out there, a large volume of content that is actually content, advertising disguised as content, massive amounts of information. So the question is, will artificial intelligence make us smarter? So I'm describing general content, training a language model in general content. That's the best path to market. So from a marketing perspective, that gets you a platform that's readily available because you're simply scraping the internet. Now, you could have scaled and graded the different content sources to give some authority to higher value or quality content. Let's say, for example, you're using the Google content quality measures, and you're plugged into that. Maybe Google Bard is using that. Well, that's better because now we have higher quality content. But a lot of these quality measures, are they universal to all types of content? So if you're a scientist and you write in the APA format, and a social psychologist writing in the APA format, a machine learning tool could say, if this content is in the APA format, which is the required format for this environment, and this content is schematically filled out correctly, or it's been through a peer review study or something like that, it can give it a little bit more score, a better score. It could say, yes, this is better quality content. However, we do know that there are peer reviewed articles that are fake. They're false. They could be influenced by sponsors, for example. And so these large language models are faster. They're definitely faster than a human, but they don't guarantee accuracy in results. This is very important. Just like it doesn't guarantee accuracy in the results of a human. The problem is the robot of AI in the human brain is seen as a shortcut, as a tool. So people who want to take shortcuts will use these tools to produce additional content that are going to go out on the internet and become fodder for language model, and the language model is going to degrade in intelligence. Now, this is the same thing that happens in human populations. So, for example, let's say you have a religious cult, and the religious cult has certain types of lessons and education and certain beliefs about the world that are objectively false. So the religious cult believes there's a flying spaghetti monster in the sky, and there's no way to prove there's a flying spaghetti monster in the sky. There's no way to disprove there's a flying spaghetti monster in the sky because it can be all-knowing, it can be invisible, all this thing. But if there's enough people who believe this to be the normal, the language model wouldn't know that it's false information. So let's say mainstream media is talking about something, and the mainstream media is considered a credible source. I've asked the AI models what they consider a credible source, and they've given me a list of things, which I did notice was biased. But ultimately, here's the thing. If enough people talk about something, it will be considered to be true, but it may not be true. In fact, it may be objectively false. It may be easily demonstratably false, like the earth is flat. There's whole societies of individuals who are part of an organization that literally studies the earth and claims the earth is flat. They have evidence that the earth is flat. Yet, the majority of people know the earth is round. However, inside that community, the intelligence and knowledge of that community is that the earth is flat. See, we individually have to do the work and take the due diligence to know whether or not information is true or false. Now, even after we believe it to be true, we still have to be open to verifying that information before we use it in a critical situation. Now, you can't always be verifying the information, so we have to have credible sources. We have to know how to figure out what sources, the language patterns and other factors that determine if something is being accurately conveyed. But if you have a computer system doing it and you make the assumption that the computer system is accurate, and then you use the information without properly verifying, then you ultimately get dumber and dumber and dumber, because it's a self-defeating loop. We keep feeding garbage out on the internet. At the beginning of the internet, when search engines came out, every search was quality information because the internet was primarily an educational platform. Now today it's primarily an entertainment platform. But the colleges and universities would vet the information before it goes online. And then the quality of the information, there was a lot of peer pressure to provide quality and useful information. And so you'd go do a Google search, or an Alta Vista search, or a Yahoo search, and you would get decent results. Now today, when you have a serious question and you do a search on a search engine, what kind of results do you get? Well, you get advertisements. You get the most popular content rather than the most accurate content. And at times, you may not get any result that is useful because the search engine itself will filter the content. So, artificial intelligence will not make us any smarter. We have to take a conscious effort to understand how knowledge works. So the truth is always the truth, whether or not people believe it. That's a primary function of things being true. But we have to be able to verify that, because something can sound true, it can have evidence, and it can ultimately be false. So if we're going to use these artificial intelligence tools, we use them in the context of the skills that we're talking about here. Research methods, for example. We use the artificial intelligence tools as search queries or contextual generation. What do I mean by that? Well, rather than asking the search engine rather than asking the AI to give you an answer, you would ask the AI to give you a range of possible answers, and then from that range of possible answers, you would save a lot of time and effort. So you would ask, what are 15 ways to solve this problem? It's going to give you 15 ways. And some of the ways you're going to recognize are completely idiotic, because AI always gives you an answer. Not necessarily the right answer, but it always gives you an answer. But if you said, how do I solve the problem of global warming? It's going to come back and say global warming is a complex issue, and here's what is thought about it, and then here's the answer. That's not going to have enough scope in order to determine if that's the right answer, because the topic of global warming is controversial in the media, and the media biases certain ways depending on what political campaigns, what person is president in the United States, or what the UN is doing. But if you ask what are 15 ways to reduce climate change or to reduce global warming, you could have at least one answer in there that would be a practical thing that can be implemented. If you ask for compare and contrast electric vehicles versus internal combustion engines, the AI would give you a compare and contrast between the two, but intelligence, improving your own skills, would give you the option to say, oh, well, there are propane vehicles, there are internal combustion gasoline or internal combustion diesel. There's electric vehicles, electric hybrid vehicles, so you have a wider range of scope to find what is the potential solution. You also, in the case of any controversial topic, electric cars, that kind of stuff, you're going to have a lot of controversy or content that changes over time. So when electric vehicles first came out, they were the rage, they were the coolest thing. If you got one, you're going to save the planet. And then now we find out today that the lithium in the batteries is literally mined by slaves, very often child labor, and that many of the rare earth metals, the way they're being accumulated, is actually destroying the environment worse than the combustion engines have in a longer period of time. See, we are in our program here, we are aware of the influence factors that people use to persuade opinion or to otherwise have propaganda to support a position. And knowing that, we cannot accept that the artificial intelligence large language models are accurate. Even the companies who hire people to validate the information that's in the language model or the sources could be biased. So if Nazi Germany came up with an artificial intelligence tool and hired Nazi scientists to go through and validate the data in the model, do you think that would be an accurate model for a global audience? It would not. See, because every culture, every political system, every individual has certain biases in their system. And these biases, we have to work them out analytically to determine what is true and what is false. And I actually did a study with the artificial intelligence platform ChatGPT. And by the way, there are many different platforms, but I was trying to discern whether it could tell me how to determine what is true. So for example, the content in the large language model, if you ask a question, it comes back internally, it's coming back with a lot of possible answers based on probability. And then it gives you the answer it thinks is most appropriate to your response. Actually, the answer it believes you are most likely to like or to accept, because again, with millions of users at $20 a month, it's a very profitable platform, especially if the end user is happy with the results. Now, again, in our world, we don't want to be happy with the results. We want accuracy of the results, so we make better decisions, position ourselves better in the marketplace, gain better strength and power in the use of fact. And so we don't want to be happy with the result. Sometimes we're going to find out stuff that impacts our cognitive biases or triggers our cognitive biases. But do you see what we're talking about here? Is that there's a detrimental feedback loop that as more people use AI to create content, if they aren't properly vetting that content and putting it out on the internet, then the next language model will get trained on material that's less quality than the previous material. In the case of when there was a big article marketing, from the beginning of the internet till now, there was a big push on article marketing and people were actually just spinning content. The content was low quality. It was primarily focused for advertising. So even the foundation of AI is a problem. And then when it comes to the large language models, let's say they restricted it specifically to the heavy researched, peer-reviewed papers and stuff like that, then the AI model is not that useful for the general population. The general population can't understand a lot of these research papers, which they are readily accessible. And the problem is they can't build a language model off of them because the licensing behind that would just kill their budget. But my point being is that those AI models would be so specialized that only people who could understand those documents would be able to use them, because you have to still be able to ask the right questions. So now what would be very useful for AI is to read those highly technical papers and convert them to normal language for fifth graders. But the point is, you have to be able to ask really good questions. So yes, the prompts matter, but more important than the prompt is the process you use to determine whether or not you are obtaining accurate and useful information. Then once you have that information, what's your ability to apply that information for specific outcomes? So I am not at all concerned about artificial intelligence being used, because the dumb people will get dumber and the smart people will get smarter. If there's an intelligence gap, that will just widen. Now, AI does allow you to do things faster. Artificial intelligence can process terabytes of data in a very short period of time. And if you understand that and you ask great questions and you use methodologies for discovering information, getting broad lists rather than specific answers, and then using outside sources and methodology in order to validate what's best for your situation, you will then be in a better position. And the last thing AI is really good for is monitoring people. Because when you ask a question to AI, a lot of people believe it's confidential. Well, if you're tracking who's asking what questions, it'll be a very useful, like a corporate intelligence resource. So you could even give out false information or biased information to persuade opinions with the platform itself. So I'd be aware of who owns the platforms and what the platform is giving you, and basically just treat it like a personal assistant, as a researcher that you've hired to go out and find information, or at least narrow the scope of a particular topic so that you can be more focused on work that matters. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. If you'd like to go into this topic in detail and look at specific applications of artificial intelligence in your environment, if you want to look at the risk cases associated with AI, as many companies are getting rid of actual people and replacing them with AI, we can talk about that in a paid consultation. Now, the factors you want to consider here when you start using AI at a large volume is that it's going to pretty much give you the same garbage faster. So how do we address that? How do we validate information? How do we test our assumptions? And how do we implement these insights for larger results? The internet is full of information, and it doesn't help anybody unless you know how to use it. That's what we do here at Inside Strategic Relations. If you have any questions about what I've covered here today, visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com, where we have newsletters and courses and coaching programs to help you transform business relationships into profits using insights and intelligence that position you as an expert or otherwise give you authority in a marketplace. Thanks for listening.